control on Luke's side. Luke is... this is kind of where the meta's going. We've got Jeskai versus blue-white was a pretty interesting discussion that's been happening over the last couple of months. And what I'm noticing happening is that the Jeskai decks are slowly just turning into blue-white decks. And Luke's really on that trend. Yes, he still has Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, but he doesn't even have the full set anymore. And he started to play, for example, 2 Settle the Wreckages in his main deck. And in a lot of ways, the Jeskai decks are just getting very light on red cards.
And you're seeing decks that are trying to generate a lot more value. In particular, when it comes to decks like the Spirit deck, it's very good to be able to answer multiple creatures at the same time. So the Settle the Wreckage is going to be a pretty big deal if you can execute it properly in a matchup like this. And against decks like Hollow One and casting cards, specifically the namesake card Hollow One or Gourmet Gangler, a Lightning Bolt's really not going to be worth too much. So it makes sense to go a little bit more towards these white, kind of broader catch-alls that can hit more than one creature at the same time as well.
Yeah. In this kind of matchup, the red cards should be pretty decent.
Yes. Barring these Geist of St. Traffs.
Exactly. And Zan's first play here looks like it's going to be an end-step Mausoleum Wanderer, but he's using Aether Vial to put all his cards into play. Maybe trying to dodge a Logic Knot. 3 of those in the main for Luke.
Yeah, not really a reason to expose your creatures to counterspells in a matchup like this.
Is it possible in this kind of matchup, or reasonable for Zan to just put all his creatures into play through Aether Vial, or will he have to expose himself to Logic Knot at some point?
You do have to be the aggressor. And you see he's shocking here. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see him casting some kind of creature spell in this window. The Jeskai control deck is heavier on lighter on Logic Knot than it is on Cryptic Command. So finding this window to get under Cryptic Command could be a big win if you see this Geist of St. Traff resolve. And yeah, the Geist of St. Traff, it is in, and that's going to make this Wanderer connect for 2 as well.
Yeah, pumps there. Vial on 2. We will see Lightning Bolt at the Wanderer.
Yep, and activation on Vial, Rattle Chains the block for that Lightning Bolt, and 1 more damage off the Wanderer.
Ooh. No responding to... Well, you can respond to the target, but that's going to be a pretty good big win here for Zan. And of course, if Luke... as we see in this matchup, he's really putting Luke to the test of saying, hey, if you untap in Supreme Verdict, you got this, but you better have it.
And Luke's thinking about casting a Path to Exile here, which seems to suggest there is no Supreme Verdict available.
Yeah, Luke takes 3, draws his main deck Negate.
Ugh. That is not good in this matchup.
No, just 1 copy. It makes sense sometimes you'll see a lot of these 1-ofs because it's a 4-Snapcaster Mage deck. He gets extra value off that.
And Negate been a pretty popular one-of in the main deck of these Jeskai and Zorius decks as well.
Other main decks that Luke has today, 1 copy of Peak, 1 copy of Hieroglyphic Illumination.
Ooh.
Yeah, I like that one. I like that card.
Are we setting up some Terminuses?
No Terminus in the main.
Okay, that
no
makes
Terminus in the side, actually.
I like the Illumination less if we're not Terminusing.
That's definitely the word.
It's got to be it.
Terminizing. We do see, going back here on Zan's turn, it's an attack. Snapcaster Mage targeting Lightning Bolt, but the real win here, Snapcaster Mage is just going to block Geist of St. Traff.
Yeah, and the Spirits deck, really not going to be able to do much in the way of interaction when a thing like that shows up.
Zan says go. Luke end step casts that Lightning Bolt on the Wanderer. Luke's down to 9. Zan with a Vial on 2 and 4 mana up and a Mutavault in play. A lot of stuff going on that Luke will have to answer. And here's another Rattle Chains from Zan, protecting that Wanderer.
And Luke paid that some respect by not using Lightning Bolt in combat, as the Rattle Chains would be another point. It would grow the Mausoleum Wanderer.
Luke's draw's not helping. After that, picking up the Negate last turn, he picks up Logic Knot this turn. And misses his land drop, says go. This is not great for Jeskai control.
Mm-hmm.
He is representing Settle the Wreckage here.
Right. The Mausoleum Wanderer will cover that, however.
Right.
In the previous turn, you saw Yeah, we're probably going to see a little bit of song and dance pertaining to Mutavault versus Cryptic Command here, where if you declare attackers and Luke taps your creatures down with the Cryptic Command, you can still fire up the Mutavault if the other mode does not return Mutavault to your hand and come across for 2 points. Alternatively, if you just activate the Mutavault and go to combat and Luke Cryptic Commands, then your Mutavault is also just tapped.
I love what Zan does. He attacks for 5, casts an Aether Vial, makes a land drop, and says go. Luke's going to use Path to Exile, looks like on that Wanderer. And Luke's in a path, and he'll try to untap. Yeah, Zan was going to... That die was a reminder. First he put it on the Vial, and he said, no, wait, that's for next turn.
Right.
5th land for Luke and passes. But he's down to 4. With Zan having lethal on the board, it's just going to force action.
Right, and Luke's still 1 mana shy of something like firing up the Celestial Colonnade as a blocker.
Yeah, I think what happened was Luke pathed the Wanderer so that he could, even if he missed that land drop for the turn, he wants to Cryptic to Fog.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great situation.
And without another spell, it's also not a full fog, unless you also bounce the Mutavault.
Right, so what happens is Zan goes to attacks, and if Luke says tap, draw, then Zan says, okay, that happens. Activate Mutavault.
Yep. This will be a check for Spell Queller as well.
So tap, draw. Zan says, yeah, that works. Draw your card. Now will Zan activate Mute? That was actually during upkeep.
Yeah, he was trying to minimize the chance that
Spell Queller
showed up, because that would just be lethal on this turn.
So now Mutavault attacks in. Luke's down to 2, so he can't Cryptic Command his way out. Well, he can, but he has to counter bounce. It's really bad.
Island Snapcaster Mage Cryptic Command with the Snapcaster as a blocker for the Mutavault is something. Also, as we've mentioned, bouncing the Mutavault.
Drew a fetch land. Now he can still use that one, but that's his last fetch land for the game.
Right.
Or at least until he Lightning Helixes something. And back to Zan we go. Picks up a Seachrome Coast.
Yeah, that one's no good, though. Zan is the player applying pressure at this point in time.
Down to 1 for Luke. Did he find that Snapcaster Mage?
We fetched for basic planes here, so he has 3 non-blue sources. So it's got to be something other than that.
Oh, activate Colonnade and Path. And
Flash a
flashes
Mausoleum.
Oh, yeah, because Rattlechains. Rattlechains gives a flash. Okay, there we go.
That's game.
So Zan takes game 1. In a lot of ways, he felt like he checked Luke on that Supreme Verdict. Was able to play around the rest of the Jeskai deck, and with only 1 copy of Supreme Verdict in the 75, that strategy's going to work out.
Yeah, there's largely been a trend towards Settle the Wreckage over Supreme Verdict, and Zan is certainly a player that follows the metagame at large, and you know these players are both playing with Lotus Box sleeves. Good chance that he just knows what Purcell's list is.
Makes sense, and so well played on Zan there into the meta. We will look at some sideboard options. For Zan Syed, as we saw, even with our Bant Spirits deck, the Azorius Spirits deck spends a lot of its time devoting its sideboard to combo matchups. So you see Rest in Peace, Stony Silence, Damping Sphere. There are some options, though. Detention Sphere, Mana Leak, Worship, and then Geist of St. Jeff. That would be his 3rd copy. Maybe that comes in?
The 2 Mana Leaks are going to be great against Cryptic Command in basically any spot, and certainly Settle the Wreckage if you're applying significant pressure, if you can force Luke to have access to it on turn 4 or 5. And that extra Geist of St. Draft, it's really just your best creature in matchups like this.
Yeah, I guess there are 4 Path to Exiles that Zan needs to replace, and those are all going to be upgrades.
Yeah, those cards are not so good in the matchup.
Yeah, outside of that, do you look, I mean, there are Planeswalkers. Detention Sphere has targets, but that's kind of taking the wrong role.
Yeah, like a Detention Sphere can be fine. You see a lot of players bring in Rest in Peace in matchup like this. It's pretty mopey. You're just turning off Snapcaster Mage. So recently, Search for Escanta has given you another thing that you kind of interact with. So it has gotten a little bit better in matchups like this. I would definitely not bring in all 3, but I can see an argument for 1.
All right, Luke's side. He's got some counter spells of his own, Ceremonious Rejection and Dispel. Those don't really play here. But he has Surgical Extraction, Vendilion Click, I like this. A 1/1 split of Baneslayer Angel and a Lyra Dawnbringer. Celestial Purge, Negate, Timely Reinforcements, and Wear Tear. The Angels may be okay here.
I think that the Angels are just excellent. They're going to put pressure on Zan to maybe leave in some small number of Path to Exiles. When we saw Zan take a build of Spirits to the top 8 of an Open previously, we saw Baneslayer Angel be the choking point. He did just lose to a Baneslayer Angel, just kind of just colded him.
Yeah.
And then the Vendilion clicks are also pretty reasonable. In a lot of spots, they'll be able to make a trade in combat. You also get to see what's up in the hand, inform you pertaining to things like, are there spell quellers available? Are there some sideboard counter spells available? That information can be pretty valuable. And if it's just kind of a medium hand and there's just one card that's better than all the others, of course, taking it's still very good.
I can see that. This is a matchup, though. Yeah, we saw Zan beat a lot of control decks with this. I believe he was playing Azoria Spirits then as well with his runner-up finish. A decent... He does a good job of really disrupting in this matchup while still applying pressure.
Yeah, and Zan actually mentioned that he really likes playing the Spirit side against these controlling decks, and big reason is you just get to play on their end step, which is Jeskai.
Right.
Jeskai's trying to do that to other players, and then by having a bunch of flash threats of your own, you kind of turn the matchup on its head, the way that they would normally play against a creature deck.
Yeah, unlike the Bant Spirits deck, Zan's deck has a full commitment to Rattle Chains. He has... we've seen 2 Bant Spirits players. Magalish had 0 Rattle Chains. Catlight had 2. Zan has 4. He's playing the Azoria Spirits build, and that should really help him in a matchup like this.
Yeah, we've already seen that play out a little bit here just in Game 1. That gives you pretty good insulation against Lightning Bolts and Path to Exiles. One of the weaknesses of Rattle Chains in previous iterations, when we saw Bant Spirits playing Collected Company, not Aether Vial, was in order to turn on your flash game, you had to cast that first Rattle Chains. Vial makes it so you can just save that, Vial in your other creatures, and then use Rattle Chains to block later.
So as we are now in September, Star City Games game night, we have some new tokens and pins to talk about. So in September, we have the Garden Tendencies. This is your Westvale Abbey Panda. That's being given away now at stores all around the country for their weekday tournaments. And we have some upcoming ones. If you haven't seen them, we have Head of the Class. That's our October one. And of course, we see, well, I don't know which one's the head of class, whether it's the tiger here, lion, tiger, cat, or whether it's the goat eating the homework.
Is that a cheetah?
The goat's actually eating the homework,
Is that a puma?
Something. It's a 3/3 beast token. That one's being giving away October. And if you get registered, we also can have Rise from the Nashes. Whoa. Whoa. And we have this alligator token with a bird. It's an elemental. You can get that one. That's a good one.
That one is fantastic.
The bird's got a good home, so you got that stick to prop open the croc.
That is really not the best strategy against crocodiles.
Well, it depends how good the stick is.
That'd be a really good stick. Fun survival tip for people watching that may live near alligators or crocodiles is their jaw closing muscles are dramatically stronger than their jaw opening muscles. So the trick is to find them with their mouth closed and stop them from ever opening it. Propping it open with a stick is probably a failing strategy.
Because that would be, that's engaging the jaw closing muscles.
Right.
You gotta...
You're facing them at their advantage.
Instead what you do is you put, when their mouth's shut, you put a big rock on top of their mouth.
Exactly.
And then you got them.
Yeah. Put them in the squeeze.
Both players starting off just on some lands. And that's somewhat similar. Last game, Zan had an Aether Vial going, but we were in a mostly the similar situation.
Yeah, nothing too exciting on the early turns here. The big win for Zan in that first game was on turn 3, just being able to resolve Geist of St. Traft. And it is worth noting that Zan has not made the effort to squeeze in even a single copy of Cavern of Souls, relying on Aether Vial to do the heavy lifting there.
Luke, we see land 3. Zan, end step, going to go for a Rattle Chains. See if Luke wants to make a play before he allows Zan to untap.
Yeah, just the naked Rattle Chains is pretty inviting to tag with the removal spell immediately.
And that's the hard part, because, right, if you don't, what'll happen is Zan will hit you, play a land, hit you for 2, and then say go. And he actually will take the opening to use Vendilion Click. I like this. Lets him make some smarter decisions. See a big old pile of glare. No, we see Detention Sphere, Thalia, Rattle Chains, Drogskull Captain. And there we go. Thanks to the Luke with the assist. Geist of St. Traft.
I think Mausoleum Wanderer.
The Mausoleum Wanderer. So a pretty good hand. It's actually missing land 3.
Yeah, land 3 would be a big deal.
You almost don't want to draw Zan into it.
It's tough because the other cards, I believe, are a fair amount worse than the Geist of St. Traft. You do turn Zan on a little bit. His hand's kind of light on mana. You don't really want him to draw that third land. The difference between doing it over the course of 1 turn versus 2 turns is not going to be too dramatic, given that there has not been much pressure. This game is kind of even to this point. If Luke already has some kind of clean answer to the Geist, some kind of sweeper effect, if he's drawn that Supreme Verdict, then he really doesn't have to sweat any of this.
Luke says go, and he's hoping the Zan doesn't hit the land. However, Zan does draw basic planes.
If nothing changes, the Vendilion Click can just block the Geist.
Right.
The Azorius Spirit stack, it's not like Zan has shown up with lightning bolts, so the chip shots aren't a huge deal. In order to win the game, Zan will have to do it in combat.
Zan attacks. Luke takes 2.
Zan was hoping for a block, I think.
Yeah. Luke does have Bolt, 2 more lands, Teferi, and another card. So look, that's really his plan. As we see from Zan, a land, a Mausoleum Wanderer, and a Thalia.
Yeah, Thalia forces Luke to produce more lands to be able to cast any of his most impactful spells, his Cryptic Command, Settle the Wreckage, Supreme Verdict. You can maybe catch him light on lands.
Says go, plays land 4. Looks like Luke does have Lightning Bolt at the ready.
If Zan can engineer a situation where he forces a lot of action, either Luke firing off a lot of removal spells, firing off a sweeper, and then Zan follows up with the Geist of St. Traft, that would probably be the best possible for him. So I believe that that's the line. He's trying to push Luke to do something big, use a lot of resources to deal with these creatures, and then clean up with the Geist after the fact.
A swing for 5 from Zan. It's just extra pressure. See Lightning Bolt there in Luke's hand. He's going to have to spend 2s. There's Thalia. He has Lightning Bolt, Cryptic Command, land Teferi.
And he knows about a second Rattle Chains.
Right, so if he goes for Lightning Bolt, he'll have to pay 2 and then it will get countered. Rock in a hard place for Luke. He's going to go for the Bolt. Was he supposed to main phase this then? Is that what, or he can just shoot the Thalia.
Right, yeah.
Can't Rattle Chains that.
That one is no spirit.
Smart play by Luke.
We'll see if a Spell Queller was picked up here.
That would really be a feel bad, wouldn't it? Or you can flash in Drogskull Captain. Now, granted, Thalia's still not a spirit.
Oh.
But you can counter it by sacrificing the Wanderer. It's a 3/3. Okay.
Yeah, this line
Heads
is
up
reasonable.
play.
And you're putting Luke in a position where if he has a big 4-mana spell, he needs to produce an untapped land to be able to cast it. Protecting the Thalia does that. Also, Luke could not possibly cast it to Fairy here.
He drew Settle the Wreckage.
Yeah, now Zan would like to have a Mausoleum Wanderer on the battlefield.
It's like that. He could get punished here. Settle the Wreckage would be a huge play. Well, depending on how much Zan attacks with.
Zan not super interested in turning any of these creatures into basic lands. Yeah, maybe one land to be fine for him. I'd probably expect at least the Draw-Skull Captain to stay home.
Ooh, just Thalia. I don't think that will earn the Settle the Wreckage.
That is an expensive path to exile. Luke does not seem pleased.
Goes to 9. I mean, Luke could always bounce draw on the Thalia on end step, something like that. If he can wait till 7 mana, he has to wait to a ton of mana. He just does nothing. They trade some draw steps. Land 6 for Luke. He'll pass again. This is a... Zan's got him in a squeeze here. It's real nice.
Yeah, he just has a pretty significant battlefield advantage, and just knowing the matchup, knowing the nature of what people are doing in their Jeskai control decks in Modern, respecting Settle the Wreckage allows him to just press his advantage here on the battlefield.
And that's what Zan's just doing. I mean, we know he could be flashing in a Rattle Chains. He could be flashing in a Geist of Saint Traft. He's declining to do both, continuing just to hit at Luke 2 points at a time. Says go. Luke will end step Cryptic Command, bounce, draw, and he has to do it on Thalia because of that Rattle Chains in Zan's hand, and he will. And I think what he wants to do here, if I'm not mistaken, is he'd like to get to the point where he can go Teferi plus leave up Settle the Wreckage. Draws Snapcaster Mage off that Cryptic. That's a huge draw. Luke fetches down to 6.
Yeah, and just gives him access to either that Lightning Bolt or another Cryptic Command. The Thalia, because it's not a Spirit, because Zan doesn't have an Ether Vial, if he wants to recommit that, Zan will have to do that on his own main phase.
It just takes so much mana for Luke to safely make this Teferi.
Yeah, even if he gets up to 7, then he can't settle through a Thalia.
Right. So he has to get to 8. And we'll see Geist of Saint Traft flashed in while Luke's tapped out.
Well, this would be a check for Supreme Verdict.
Luke's going to pass. Or Zan will pass, rather. Luke does not have Supreme Verdict. He has Settle the Wreckage, Snapcaster Mage, Teferi, and 2 lands.
And the way the game is played out, Zan was able to get in a couple of those hits with that Thalia. With Luke at 6, it's really tough to just try to use the Snapcaster Mage to block the Geist of Saint Traft. You probably have to just lean on the Settle the Wreckage, but we've seen Zan make good attacks previously on the face of that anyway.
Passed, and he passes. Luke's at 6. With that Geist in play, Zan can force some action. But this is all about Settle the Wreckage right now.
Luke really wishes that was a Supreme Verdict.
Geist will swing. It brings the 4/4 Angel along with it. Now Geist is a 3/3, thanks to Draw-Skull Captain.
You see the Snapcaster Mage hovering in the front of Luke's hand here. Because it's just Geist attacking, you can go for the line where you flash the Snapcaster Mage. You can either Tugger Cryptic Command or Lightning Bolt. You'll be able to do something with either of those.
Yeah.
Go for the block on the Geist of Saint Traft.
I almost want to like bounce draw on the Angel token. As odd as that sounds.
Yeah, saving some life there could be a big deal.
See if that's what he does. Here's Snapcaster Mage. Looks like it's targeting Cryptic. He's really spending this whole game trying to create a window for Teferi.
Yeah, or to top deck one of his more effective haymakers, like the Baneslayer Angel and Lyra Dawnbreaker in the sideboard.
So he's targeting Cryptic Command, and Snapcaster Mage blocks Geist of Saint Traft. And now he's going to bounce draw on the Angel token. Now keep in mind the the Geisting Draft is not going to die to this block. This is a chump block. Drogskull Captain has made Geist into a 3/3. This is really just a bunch of life gain that Luke is making.
Yeah, the plan seems to be to establish one of those life-linking Angels, try to draw into one of those.
Draws into Electrolyze. That's it's a harder one to play here. That Rattle Chains in Zan's hand that both players know about is just a pain for Luke at the moment. And Aether Vial from Zan. That's good. It's more mana, and he gets to leave up Rattle Chains. We go back to Luke. Draws, I think, Hieroglyphic. Yeah.
Wouldn't expect him to be casting that one in this game.
But finally, Luke has reached enough mana to cast Teferi and to have Settle the Wreckage through Thalia after he draws. This was the whole game plan. And now he will go for it, drawing a card up to 5. Draws another land.
This would be a window for Zan to produce a Spell Queller or a Mausoleum Wanderer.
Yep. Another land by Luke. He says go to end step, and Zan flashes in Selfless Spirit. Another great creature, but again, Settle the Wreckage is the card. Luke will get to untap with Teferi.
The Tide starting the turn. If you can get through this turn, then
Yeah.
you can start to actually generate some advantage.
Yeah, well, if Zan has a Mausoleum Wanderer, then he's going to win right here. Right? He can just flash into play. It's a 2/2 from the captain. He'll counter Settle the Wreckage.
Right.
Full swing, Settle. Does Zan have the Wanderer? Spell Queller. That works too. Luke extends the hand, and Zan's Syed 2-0 is your winner.
Yeah, you saw Zan really leverage positive tempo in this matchup. Just was able to get significantly ahead on the battlefield. Purcell playing a version of Jeskai Control that's leaning pretty heavily on Settle the Wreckage. As we mentioned, just one copy